The India that I envision for the year 2040 will be larger in territory and in population than what we all expect. However, it will not be the same economic supergiant we all expect it to be. On the contrary, I believe with the current state of affairs that Pakistan will start to implode in the year 2022. Extremist influence in Pakistan will grow to an extent that will be uncontrollable by the law enforcement agencies of Pakistan, which will lead in turn to a refugee crisis from states like Punjab and Sindh into India. Now, due to the cultural and linguistic similarity between the populations of India and Pakistan, and especially of the regions which border each other, I believe that the refugees who come from Punjab and Sindh will assimilate themselves into the Indian population far easier than any other refugee movements. Now, this will lead inevitably to a growth in Indian population. The cultural assimilation of these populations will in turn lead to economic decadence. The projected growth that we have for India will take a sharp U-turn because of the inevitable increase in population due to the refugee crisis. Now, the effects on Indian politics will also be very grave. We will see an increased anti-immigrant sentiment and also internal strife between the Hindu and Muslim populations of India. There will also be problems in Pakistan where nuclear weapons of Pakistan and their existence or their security might be threatened. The growing extremist influence will also lead to a decrease in the level of security that is maintained in many of these nuclear facilities that could lead to nuclear weapon theft by extremists, and that is one of the last. Now, we can also expect a lot of internal independence movements in Pakistan. Places like Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, which are already under the threat of independence insurgent movements, may start to increase the tactics, the non-conventional tactics that they are currently employing, and eventually break the country internally. Kashmir, which will be largely ignored by the Pakistani army and the political structure, will start to gain independence. Will start to see an increase in the rise of independence movements in both the Pakistan occupied side and the Indian occupied side. Now, the independent Kashmir, however, will be possibly taken over by militants from the Pakistani side who are bound to gain influence. We also know that Bangladesh has seen a sharp turn in events politically. Although Bangladesh was revered for the economic potential it has and for the political stability that it has maintained over the years, current incidents like the killing of journalist Avijit Roy and other bloggers by people claiming to be affiliates of the Islamic State are currently threatening the pluralistic society of Bangladesh. The internal conflict in Bangladesh might go beyond control and Islamic fundamentalists might take power. Now, this will lead to a refugee crisis akin to that of 1971, and that will inevitably lead to an exodus of refugees from Bangladesh into India. This will further exacerbate the political and economical fragility. This will further exacerbate the problems that India is bound to face with the surge of refugees from the Pakistani side. Now, the situation in both the neighboring nations will lead the international community to pressurize India and probably even aid India in quelling the problems in quelling the threat that is growing within that would be growing within these nations. The international community would help India consume both Pakistan and Bangladesh into its territory. Now, if that were to happen, India will be larger in size and greater in population, but it will not be the economic superpower that we expect it to be, because we would be exhausted by the constant fighting that we will have to undergo or we will have to see in order to consume these both nations, and also because of the population increase that will happen if we consume these two territories. Now, the reasons for the internal problems in both Pakistan and Bangladesh are closely related to India and the hatred that Pakistan has adopted towards Bangladesh. As the director of Afghani intelligence, Dr. Amrullah Saleh, mentioned in many occasions, the reason why Pakistan is very fragile in terms of its security apparatus is because it has adopted a terrorist harboring policy in order to inflict damage upon both its neighbors, India and Afghanistan. The reasons for the fragile security situation of Pakistan, however, can be blamed on the terrorist harboring policy envisioned by Zia-ul Haq and Hamid Gul. These both military leaders of Pakistan believed that by harboring terrorists, they could inflict damage upon Afghanistan and India, which were formidable enemies and whom they thought were Soviet players. Now this has led to a very fragile security situation in Pakistan, purely because Pakistan had to let go of its allies, of its once allies, and treat them as terrorist organizations immediately after they reversed their policy of engagement with the United States. Now that has resulted in 143 children being killed in Peshawar and more than 200 being killed in Mumbai. Now it could also be possible that the Islamic terrorists in Bangladesh, who are turning the tide very slowly and very efficiently, could be controlled by those in Pakistan, by their brothers in Pakistan, and there is a lot of evidence to prove that. Now if that were to happen, the effects of the policies that these countries might adopt towards India may be unimaginable. The consequences of their actions will have a lot of damage on not only India's economy but on the population and on the administrative structure that India can boast of. Now if the problem is India consuming Pakistan and Bangladesh out of compulsion and out of international pressure, I believe the solution is India reaching out to both Pakistan and Bangladesh to form a political union. What do I mean by a political union? By a political union I mean a power sharing agreement wherein India, Pakistan and Bangladesh will agree upon certain conditions in order to share power between these three entities and ensure better security, better economic development and better political stability in all these three individual entities. The positive effects of this political union will be innumerable. We will see an inevitable overhaul in the administration, governance, culture and politics of the individual entities in this power sharing agreement. Now one of the examples of the effects of this power sharing agreement is the Kashmir issue. Now the Kashmir issue has always been the bone of contention between India and Pakistan. However, if there were to be a power sharing agreement between these three countries, then the troops from the Pakistan occupied side of Kashmir will, due to the goodwill that will be promoted by the political union, withdraw, and the troops from the Indian side will withdraw, thereby ensuring that the plebiscite that is to take place in the Kashmir region would be free and fair. Now one other positive effect of this union would be the water and energy issue that we are facing. We have a lot of problems with the water sharing agreements that we have signed with Pakistan. However, if there were to be a political union, then we would have dams in Kashmir and hydel projects on the Indus River, which would in turn help in the economic development of both India and Pakistan. Now the economic implications of this union will also be innumerable. Now if we look at the Indian economy as compared to that of Pakistan and Bangladesh pre-1965, we would see that the economy of Bangladesh and Pakistan was far better in terms of the GDP per capita that it produced prior to 1965. However, when both Pakistan and Bangladesh broke up, the individual economies started to rival each other and started to produce lower than that of the Indian economy. Now if there were to be a political union, then we would see more cooperation between these three economic entities. It would lead to a Eurozone-like agreement wherein we would have a similar monetary policy and there will be an inevitable overhaul in the fiscal policies of the individual union. In such a case, it would be very easy for us to rival China into becoming the world's largest economy. And also, Pakistan's proximity to oil producers will guarantee us more economic development and better facilities in terms of transport and energy generation. Now this is what China lacks, or China might lack in the next 30 or 40 years. But Pakistan's strategic location would ensure that the union as a whole develops economically and takes over China in no time. Now if these entities were to be part of the political union, it would also require for them to make a lot of concessions and compromises with respect to their individual security units. Now this would require us to form into a NATO sort of a cohort with respect to how we deal with our armed forces. Now that would lead inevitably into a better security situation around the South Asian region and also internally. We can deal with the piracy affecting the Indian Ocean and the Arabian Sea. the drug trafficking affecting Bangladesh, India, Pakistan and Afghanistan, and also the terrorism that plagues India, Pakistan and Bangladesh. Internally also, the many problems the many insurgencies that we face, like Huji in Bangladesh, Maoists in India and the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa rebels in Kashmir, can be quelled with greater force. Now, with the resolution of the Kashmir issue, we would also see that the radicals and the fundamentalists would find lesser examples to cite, lesser examples of police or military atrocities to cite to their recruits, and which would thereby decrease the recruitments of these organizations. Now, in this political union, it would also mean, with this political union, it would also mean that India has greater access to the northeast, because Bangladesh will be far more trustworthy to India, and with greater access to the northeast, we could curb the insurgencies in the northeast, and we could ensure better governance to the northeastern states. The goodwill that India shares with Afghanistan can be employed to deal with the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa issue of Pakistan, and thereby quell all problems that Pakistan is facing in the federally administered tribal areas and the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa region. The nuclear capabilities of both India and Pakistan are far greater than any other Asian neighbor that we have, than any other Asian entity. Now, if we were to combine these nuclear warheads, which would be around 230, then we would have a deterrence against many other powerful international entities. However, we could also, because of the reduction in the conflict and the promotion of the goodwill between these countries, we could also disarm our nuclear weapons and thereby promote peace and also contribute to international peace and security. Now, the cultural similarity between India, Pakistan and Bangladesh cannot be missed. If we were to combine as a political union, then the cultural similarity will make it far more possible to exist and sustain the political union. There will also be decentralization in the governmental policies. Dying cultures like those in Pakistan and like some in India can be preserved, as there will be a better impetus to deal with the cultural issues that would be conflagrating in the individual entities. Now, India has a very good way of dealing with tribals and a very good way of ensuring that tribals enjoy their lifestyle without any hindrance or without any interference from the civilizationary world, with the civilization around them. However, Pakistan has had a problem in dealing with tribals for a long time, which has led in turn to a lot of conflict between the government and the tribals, like those in Balochistan and the Pashto regions of Pakistan. Now, if India were to implement, if the union were to implement the same policies that India has implemented and execute them perfectly, then we would see a decrease in the insurgencies that have been sparked due to cultural differences between. Now, if the India model were to be implemented after alterations to these Pashto and Baloch sectors, then that would lead in turn to better peace and stability in the region, and also to better cultural assimilation of the Baloch and Pashto populations in Pakistan. Now that we know of the various implications that this political union would have, we should be more empowered to vie for this political union. We should be more empowered to make concessions. We should be empowered to urge our leaders to work towards a common goal, to work towards the integration of thought, integration of culture and integration of different peoples in these different political entities. Now, if we continue in the same path, if we continue as three different political entities fighting against each other for menial resources or for one piece of land, then we would inevitably spell doom for ourselves, because we know that with the current policies, with the current attitude that we have against each other, internal conflict cannot be stopped, and the economic and political implications can be great. Now, if this political union were to exist, we can secure for ourselves a better future, and ensure that we outdo China or outdo any other population in terms of economy and economical power in the years to come. Thank you.